Everybody, thank you for coming to this SF Peak performance. This might be the biggest attendance that I've ever had. Thank you. All right, I'm really happy that you guys are here. I'm all festively dressed for today's festivities. And it's nice to know that people are exploring a different side of their own humanity and their own consciousness. It's not easy to want to explore that side of yourself, especially when it's illegal. So there are places in the world that do have treatment centers for that use psychedelics to be able to heal all types of things. And I will let the experts explain what that is. But really all I want to do is thank you right now for being here. And I'd like to introduce my first speaker, who I had something prepared to explain, but I don't have it with me. I'm sorry, it's over there. Well, what I have is a very special person, Lai Chang, who is a biohacker much more than I ever could be, who has used certain psychedelics in microdosing and other types of doses to be able to heal certain things in her life. And she is going to bravely give a talk about what her own experiences have been. So, Janet, I want to thank you for coming up.
Thank you, everyone, for being here. I'm really excited for what is to come. This is just the appetizer, like the main course with Dr. Fadiman afterwards. I will be giving a presentation briefly about psychedelics for the purposes of personal growth and self-improvement in the areas of relationships, productivity, and other things. And then the format of this talk will be involve three parts. First, the benefits of, as you can read, moderate doses of psilocybin. Second, the benefits of microdoses in the same substance. And then also some self-awareness techniques to maximize the gains of your journeys, so to speak. Before I go on, just a little bit of background. I've discovered over the last year of using psychedelics that my experiences have been somewhat atypical. And that is, I've been trying to answer the question of why. Why have many people used psychedelics for recreational purposes?
That part of the room can't hear very well. So I want to turn the mic on just for a second. I need to test it to see if that.
Well, that was a great test.
So why don't you just grab this thing, and if you can also direct.
Can you hear me? If I speak from afar, does this work? Hello. Hello.
Okay. I think just give me a test.
Despite the fact that
Is that okay, guys?
Right,
and you can be loud? Okay, cool.
Okay, so I'll have to adjust. So should I give the intro again?
Please.
So for a little bit of background for those who don't know me, I've developed a set of self-awareness techniques that were inspired from a decade plus training for the Olympic trials in the Winter Games of 2018. I ultimately didn't get to compete because of a back injury, unfortunately, but I then went on to use these same psychological techniques, so to speak, to help with my psychedelic experiences and make them the most beneficial for me in regards to various things, which I'm excited to be speaking about today. So this is just a very detailed summary of things that I've done in the last 13 months. I'll mainly be speaking about two aspects of it, and again, it's with the psilocybin. I tried 8 sessions over the course of 3 months, and then later I'll be speaking about the microdosing experiences, again over a 3-month period, and this is between every other day and every day. And you can read the details later, but first I'll talk about the effects of moderate doses, because I think that's important to contextualize the discussion on microdosing later. So I'll spend a lot of time here and then go over microdosing briefly. So many benefits, I had many benefits personally, but I think the top 3 most relevant to most people in this room would be in the areas of productivity, overcoming fears, and relationships. So one example of productivity that was improved was I had this creative block related to, I had this idea for this online video course that I wanted to, I had some concepts to share to the world, and it would have been helpful. But for 2 years, I was unable to release or just even take the first step to creating this product. And I didn't know why, I just kept putting it off. So one of my biggest defense mechanisms when I'm afraid is procrastination. And after the first 8 times of moderate doses of psilocybin, I was able to release and create the course, release it, and then now 500 students have watched and used my materials. So that's pretty exciting. So if you think about any creative blocks that you might have, if you want to write a book, if you want to code an application for software, anything like that, release something into the world. You notice that the more you care about something, the more you care about your work, the more likely it is you are to procrastinate. At least that's for me. And then the second area that was addressed was my fear of rejection, which manifested in several ways, but specifically public speaking was very difficult for me. So in after my first ever mushroom experience, I was able to give 7 talks in 3 months with no anxiety leading up to these experiences, which is in contrast to previously, which when I had to, I delayed months and months, and I was anxious for that whole time whenever I was required to give a public talk. So that was pretty big for me. And then the third area is in relationships. So both professional and personal relationships were affected. In particular, the depth and intimacy of personal relationships and the number of opportunities in personal relationships increased by a factor of 5 times. And how I measure that, I have a quirky system on Google Calendar where I'll measure like by the hour what I spend my time doing. So I'll go back at the end of the day today and then say, okay, from 6 to 8 p.m., probably later than that, I was at the SF peak performance meetup, right? So I have a deep, detailed look into my relationships and who I spend my time with, so I was able to measure that. And then the downside with all these sessions was, of course, the time that it took. So it takes about 2-3 days to prepare, go through the 8 hours for psilocybin, and then integrate it to my daily routine after. Like if you see your worst fears and the parts of yourself that you don't really encounter normally, and things like that, you might take a day or two. So after 8 times of this, I realized, okay, I have enough insights for myself. I've had some great increases, changes in baseline, in my baseline performance. So for example, empathy in the relationships aspect, and then fear was reduced. So my baseline changed. You can see in this diagram here, with moderate doses, the baseline persists after each session, which is pretty cool. And then it will, after several months, I noticed in my qualitative tracking, I have a daily journaling system. So I was able to track noticeable changes and decreases or changes back to the original baseline after a while. So my motivation for microdosing then became to maintain the new baseline that was established. Does that make sense to everyone? Cool. Okay. So for microdosing, pros were very much the same as with the moderate doses, except it was during the effects of the substance rather than after, if that makes sense. So I had the increase in extroversion, in elevated mood, and increases in self-awareness and empathy, which all help with my relationship. So in general, I'd say the trend with microdosing is that the benefit for me was in the social aspect. So anything, if you're doing any work related to sales, marketing, talking to people, emails, things like that, it's really helpful because you're just on the same page all the time. And then the areas in which I found it difficult to do work in was in highly focused types of work. So writing, programming. I do code sometimes, but I didn't code in the 3-month period in which I performed microdoses. So there's actually this article written by a programmer, and it was published on hustle.co, the blog, on business and entrepreneurship. And he did a 30-day study on LSD on himself and microdosing. He noticed the increase in productivity with LSD, but a severe decrease in his focus, again, with psilocybin microdoses. So it's not very helpful for if you want to go heads down and work towards a deadline. Some other things I noticed were reduced motor intelligence or mechanical intelligence. So I was trying to install this my friend's IKEA furniture because I love doing that kind of thing. And for the life of me, I couldn't figure out how to maneuver my body and hands and the tools to manipulate the furniture in the right way. And usually I'm pretty good on top of that kind of thing. So a slight decrease in that I noticed. And then you might notice I forgot to share a story. When I went to New York, one of this is just to illustrate the benefits more. So I went to New York to see some friends, and I thought to myself, if I get any new clients from this trip, that'd be great. I run a consulting business, doing marketing and operations. But I'm not here for the clients, so it's okay if I don't. So I started taking the microdoses around this time, and noticed one of my first days in New York, I went to a coffee shop to get my coffee, and I ended up, the next time I checked I entered a conversation with the barista, and then the next time I checked the clock, it was 4 hours later. We had talked the entire time, and then I had finished my drink, and he ended up telling me about the problems related to the coffee shop chain. And then introduced me to the general manager, which created new business opportunities I wouldn't have otherwise. And then this was just one example of a new business opportunity that I didn't intentionally create. It was just from the natural being in a different state socially for me. Okay, so I won't diddle on about microdosing. The next part, I want to talk about some self-awareness techniques. and it's called self-awareness practices, but it also includes, this list also includes some areas of ways you can optimize your experience. So in a recreational setting, you don't really optimize for these things. So this might be another explanation for why my experiences have been atypical, but I do believe that they are repeatable if we develop a systematic framework and set and setting, as they call it, right? So set and setting meaning physical environment and social environment. Is controlled, you don't have that many people around you, and you're very comfortable and in a familiar, safe space. Some other more obvious things are meditation, journaling. So the email picture here is of, this is another tracking method that I have. It's very ad hoc, but the good thing about email is that it's time-stamped. So it's a very precise way of measuring the qualitative effects of the experiments that run. And you can see here, warm in my stomach, something about riding a scooter, feeling clumsy while making ramen, things like that. And then therapists and coaches, that is, therapists and coaches are basically paid professionals who they're trained to ask you really pointed questions that you wouldn't have thought to ask yourself otherwise. And that tends to help with exploring parts of yourself that you, exploring your emotional blocks to productivity, for example, or why you won't go to the gym, maybe some beliefs about yourself or about beauty or about attractiveness or about health or about discipline that you might not have. And then in lieu of coach professionals, I have benefited from them, but most of the time I'll use my own set of questioning. And then you'll see examples of these questions. These are just 4 samples that are just the tip of the iceberg for the questions that I run myself through. It's hard to put into words the line of questioning that I go through because it's been so many years, and so it's hard for me to come up with and put into words. But for those who are starting as a self-awareness practice to optimize, maybe consider optimize their psychedelic experiences for personal growth reasons. The first question is of behavior. So this is externally observable, so something that's easy to start with. Most of the clients that I coach, so I've transitioned recently from coaching marketing, consulting in marketing and operations to coaching the executives and CEOs on these more personal topics, because with the assistance of psychedelics sometimes, but it's hard to market. So and they've found it beneficial to start with a question that's external to them, like what are the behaviors that you would like to change? That's something that most of us can access, and then down and down it gets deeper and deeper into motivations and why you do certain things. And then, so that's pretty much most of my talk. And for purposes of time, I didn't mention many of the helpful resources, such as Dr. James Fadiman's book, Psychedelic Explorer's Guide. I'm sure the doctor can explain later tonight more what that's about. And some meditation and self-awareness exercises, the case study with hustle.co, and then my contact information for those of you who want to get in touch after tonight. Thank you very much. Please, after the talk, come to me if you have any. I'm always interested in hearing other people's stories, the challenges that they're going through, and then what they're doing to solve those challenges to be the best people that we can be. So thank you very much.
Questions for her? So you got fans.
Yes.
It sounded, did you mean to draw a distinction between LSD and psilocybin? Hustle.co case study, but it kind of sounded like you were saying that you felt that psilocybin wasn't good for problem solving, but that this person found that LSD was. Personally, I find that LSD is great for coding in microdose levels. So it's just interesting. I was curious if you thought there was a difference between the substances in that way. Can you repeat this question?
So the question is, if I'm understanding correctly, is am I drawing a distinction between the effects of LSD, microdosing on LSD and microdosing on psilocybin in terms of problem solving?
Yeah, or how good they are for, for being productive, for focused work, productive work. For example, coding, or because you mentioned that you found that microdosing wasn't helpful.
It was not for me, and then it was not for the experimenter in this article. He did find LSD to be helpful for his focus, although he would recommend something like modafinil, a nootropic substance, over any psychedelic. I believe that is the thesis of his article.
Any other questions?
You mentioned some other drugs too, MDMA, I think ayahuasca was up there, another one. Did you want to talk about those at all?
Sure, for purposes of time I didn't include those, but yeah, they've been ayahuasca and San Pedro and then MDMA, they've all been very substantially transformative to me in the same ways that moderate doses of psilocybin, you can draw the comparison there, the connection, yeah.
I don't know if you covered this before I came in, but have you read Word.net, his LSD microdosing study that he did on himself? And was your study double blind that you did on yourself?
It was not double blind because I administered the substance myself. Well, actually, wait. So this might be a legitimate concern here. So I guess I could have, for purposes of experimental rigor, I could have mixed just empty capsules or capsules with other substances in with capsules of psilocybin, for example, and then just not known because they were just so mixed. So yeah, but no, it was not double blind. And then your other question was, did I read?
Gordon Brandwin did a study. He does a lot of self-administered double-blind studies. And I was wondering if you read that or if you were informed by that at all.
So I try not to, for the purposes of just having an unbiased account, an unbiased personal account of my experiences. I have actually not read even Dr. Fadiman's work. I have in completion because I try not to bias my experiences. And so after this more than a year of experiences, I think now I'm beginning to become more informed about other people's experiences and their opinions. So I'm open to other resources that anyone may have to share.
First, thank you very much for sharing your experience. My question is about self-awareness and your experience with observing yourself, actually tracking yourself, and then looking back on how you performed on a regular basis. What that was like, and in conjunction with the psychedelic experience and being less judgmental towards your actions and decisions and your accomplishments.
I'm sorry, I didn't get that question. The question that you were asking.
You were tracking, to be more self-aware, you were tracking your daily activities. I was wondering how that experience was for you. And
how the tracking?
Yeah.
The self-awareness tracking
sure, yeah.
was for, or the psilocybin, the effects of the microdosing tracking.
Sure, the tracking of this microdosing. Yeah.
The effect on, I'm sorry.
On you?
On me? The tracking on me? The practice of tracking?
I'm more interested in like your awareness of watching yourself, track yourself, and then being able to reflect on what you're tracking, and then seeing like, okay, like this has successfully helped me in this way because I've observed these things about myself from the data that I'm absorbed or collected from doing the experiment?
So what have the effects been of my tracking and practice and just self-awareness in general? I think these were what I presented earlier would be a simplified version of my learnings. It took a lot of time to compile the lessons that I learned from the journaling practice that I have and from the emailing myself different threads of observations. And then today's presentation was a summary of the top 3 most relevant benefits to all of you, or potential benefits to other individuals who are seeking personal development.
So there are a lot of substances that are hard to measure in terms of your dosage. How did you successfully measure the right dosage for yourself? With LSD, that's water soluble. So I know that you can measure out specific water levels for yourself with that. But with psilocybin, how do you know what you're taking?
So I took the whole dried mushrooms from a trusted source, and then I used a scale. I don't know what they're called, but they measure very small increments, and it was down to there were 3 decimal points after. So it was pretty precise. That was for the microdoses.
But you got the weight down. But what about the concentration? How do you know? Or do you?
Right, so that's a valid concern because with the mushrooms, what typically, and I didn't know this before, so I was intending to microdose back when I wasn't measuring as precisely. I took a very small cap from the mushroom and then took that as my microdose. And for those of you who have experience, you may be laughing because that was not a microdose for me. So the cap for its weight is relatively concentrated in psilocybin. And okay, so I didn't know, and then I learned from the personal experience there, and I tried to standardize the microdoses such that they're with only the stems of the mushroom, which are pretty much equal in concentration compared to, well, they're different. They're lower in concentration with psilocybin. So I try to standardize that way and not include any of the mushroom caps. And then for the larger dose, the moderate doses, I'll reserve the caps for that. So the weights, what I've done with the weights on the first slide that I had with the amounts, I've benchmarked it based on what it would be with the stems, but I personally like to standardize with the caps only, so it's stronger concentration or lower weight.
Any other questions?
Round of applause.